What's up, guys? Jason Up New Age Revolution down here in the cave for the Sunday rant. That's right. I say it as if it's a regular on the show. Unfortunately, it's not a regular on the channel. I should do a more consistent rant day where I just go off, in a controlled way. I like to go off in a controlled way. Today's topic, I started thinking about after watching a couple of shows. So I'm watching Twilight Zone, the 80s version of the Twilight Zone. I'm up to disc 6 of 13 or 6 of 15, I think. It's going a little slow. I lost a little time recently with the COVID infection in the household. Quick update on that. The children's mother is testing negative as of today. Liam is testing positive as of today. He also now has the COVID pink eye, which is not fun. And the Finley and I are in the clear still. So, yeah, Finley's been sleeping with me on the couch, so I have not been able to watch my shows because he just watches TV until he falls asleep. So, but anyway, I've been watching Twilight Zone. But I also became very nostalgic for Leave It to Beaver again. So, in addition to the Twilight Zone, I throw on a couple of Leave It to Beaver episodes every night. That show I will probably consistently watch forever. I just love it that much. That and Seinfeld. It'll just always be running in the background. So and then the last couple of shows I did about the pickup, about the clock radio telephone. So anyway, it made me think about the simplicity of times long ago. So I guess the big question, I guess it's not a rant, it's more of a discussion, an open discussion where your feedback is necessary. Were we happier in previous generations, right? Is mental health, and when I say a new thing, please, I don't mean, recently, but is mental health, is depression and anxiety a newer thing? Is it a modern thing? The answer technically is yes. Yes, the anxiety and depression diagnoses are not that old. They're only a few decades old. Maybe 1970s, maybe. Things like major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder were even named, right? They didn't have names until relatively recently. So, that if you label something, then you breathe life into it. Something like ADHD, which wasn't really much of a thing decades ago, is now this massively diagnosed and massively medicated illness. Now, I'm not saying that your kids aren't off the wall, difficult to focus, whatever comes with ADHD. I'm just saying that, is there a connection between labeling it and it existing, right? So, antidepressants weren't really a thing in the 1960s and the 1970s. Creating them, advertising them, having, a $1 billion organization, the pharmaceuticals, is that bringing depression and anxiety to light, or to life even. So were we happier back then? Now we can't say because we were 8. So of course we were happier back then. We were kids. Um, were our parents? Were our parents happier back in the 80s? Were their parents happier back in the 60s or the 50s? I don't think we can go any further than that. I don't think anybody was happy in the 20s and the 30s, or were they? I don't know, like the Great Depression, and I don't know. We really don't go back that far. I go back to Leave It to Beaver, to be honest with you, because that's what started this whole thought. Were you happier in the 50s? Were you happier in the 60s, 70s, 80s than we are now? And if so, why? And my theory on that is stuff, right? We have too much stuff. And I've always said that. And look, you obviously cannot base an entire argument on television, okay? But my view of the 50s was through Leave It to Beaver. My view of the 80s was obviously from what we're doing here. But there just didn't seem to be that much stuff, right? Things were sort of simplified. Even when it comes to, your household, your home. Do you think that people of the 50s and 60s stressed out about, living room furniture and how big the television is, and are we going to mount it on the wall, and is that an OLED or is that just a regular 4K? Well, that's not going to look good, and it certainly isn't going to sound good. So don't we need a whole speaker system set up for that, like surround sound, and and all? Now we might be thinking, well, what's the big deal? I think the big deal is it just puts too much stuff in our head to think about and want and need and worry about, and then get it home and set it up and calibrate it, and then it still doesn't sound right, and then we go nuts. Then you go nuts. Right? So is the addition of more stuff and more things causing us to have more things to worry about? I say yes. Now, I could be wrong. I guess I'd have to ask my parents. But was it an easier going life back then? My memories of grandfather was work, home, dinner, television, bed. That was the life of my grandfather. And we're not talking, obviously, about the 1920s. We're talking about the 80s and even the 90s. Work, home, dinner, television, sleep. And a little bit earlier in life, my grandparents would have a Sunday tradition of going to a bar. That's right. They would go to a bar probably about 10 a.m. on a Sunday, sorry. Real church-going folk, right? They would just go to a bar Sunday morning, 10 a.m., and drink. And then come home and, I don't know, eat dinner and go to bed, I assume. But that was like and then that ended, obviously, when I got, when I was like probably 8, 9, 10 years old. That whole thing ended. But my grandpa's life didn't change much. It didn't change much. My dad was kind of the same until he got divorced. So when my parents divorced, my dad's life changed a little bit because he was free now. He had been with my mom, I assume, since high school, had 3 kids, got out, got a divorce, and then he kind of like decreased his maturity and his age a little bit and started going out and doing things as a mid-20s guy would. They were divorced in his mid-20s. Good God, that's hard to imagine. But it was simple even then. It was simple in the 80s. My dad would go to work. He'd come home. He'd eat dinner. He'd have his favorite shows that he would watch, and he would go to bed. And there wasn't just all kinds of stuff to flood the brain, right? There wasn't, you didn't need to constantly go shopping for stuff. You didn't need to constantly upgrade your stuff. You didn't need the stress of having to do that. right? Even to simplify television, it was all the same. We all had the same television. We had the same television provider. We had cable, maybe. You had 17 stations. You memorized which shows were on at 8 o'clock at night. You sat down and you watched them. That was it. You didn't get mad because Netflix took off your favorite show, or they're only putting on one episode at a time. How come I can't binge all 12 episodes? You didn't worry about that garbage. You just sat and you were simply entertained by, really innocent television programming. Right? We weren't having Twitter wars. We weren't concerned with Instagram likes. The internet, ladies and gentlemen, as I speak to you through the internet is responsible for our destruction. Period. It is responsible for putting way too much things and stuff in our hands and giving us way too much access to information, to images. Everything is at our fingertips. We don't have to long for anything anymore. And I've always said, even in my office, even in my work, I've said that the internet, if we're not careful with kids, kids will see things that they don't need to see. And obviously that's not a earth-shattering brand new statement, but think about it. Violence, for example, on the internet. There's some websites that have, if you find them, you can watch death. You can watch like real death happen, murders and suicides and car accidents and everything. You can find it. I found it several years ago and watched stuff. I saw stuff that I can't unsee and that I wish that I hadn't seen, all because I searched out this website and found beheadings. That's something you don't unsee. You can't unsee that. I think there are particular people who sign up to see that stuff. Doctors, morticians, the medical examiner, police officers. I don't think the regular folk are supposed to, be able to have access to that stuff and have it clog their brains. I still, think about some of the images that I saw on those sites. Yeah, the retail world is flooded with stuff. Go back to your living room in 1985, right? You had a television sitting on the floor. Your dad didn't make enough to get your VCR yet, so you were going to get it next year. No big deal. You had a couch that you'd had for 15 years. Your dad had a recliner in the corner, and there was some lamps. That's it. You didn't, it wasn't, this is where you lived. It wasn't Better Homes and Gardens. It was just a home, and you lived there. And I was thinking of this because I drove past the old childhood best friend's house the other day. I was in that area and I just shot down the old street there. And then housing prices are insane these days. So I looked up on Zillow or whatever what that house was going for, and ridiculously, it's going for like $170,000. It's a 1006 square foot ranch. Okay, and I remember that house. I remember the layout. You came in through the garage because you didn't use the front door. You came in through the garage, you were in the kitchen, normal sized kitchen. That led to the living room. That led to a little tiny hallway, not even a hallway, just a jut or whatever it's called. And huddled in the back of the house there was master bedroom, my best pal's bedroom, and then a very small second or third bedroom, right? And a bathroom and a linen closet. That was it. And of course it had a basement, but whatever. That was it. 1,006 square foot house. And it wasn't filled with, ridiculous over the top furnishings and technologies and smart lights and, that's the clapper, but I wish we had the clapper. Smart lights and smart locks and ring doorbells, and it was just a house and they lived there and it was okay. You know why? Because, and what is the benefit of that? One less thing for somebody to worry about, right? One less thing for somebody to worry about. I don't have to go out of my way spending thousands of dollars to furnish this thing, to get the latest and greatest. Let's just have our stuff, and then let's just sit and enjoy it. And I think people did other things. I think people got a lot more pleasure from the simplest of things. I think sitting down meant a lot to people. I think the evening paper was something that people looked forward to. I think reading books was important at nighttime for people to do. The Monday night lineup on television was probably special to some people. And a decent family dinner, and then good night now. Right? And on Saturdays we might go to the park. Right? I mean, I don't know. I just think that, we have become our own worst enemy. Our greed and our consumer, over the top consumer mentality. The more stuff we have, the better we feel. It's not true. Trust me, it's not true. You will feel better when you unwrap that thing and when you hang it up, but it'll fade real quick. I've already told you the story about the patio. I still have yet to enjoy the patio. It's about 4 years old, and I still keep making excuses of why I haven't enjoyed it. So we're never going to stop. I shouldn't say we got to stop. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to be gluttons of things, and our anxiety, depression, suicide, and addiction are going to continue to climb because I think we're miserable, and we try real hard to make ourselves feel better by having more stuff. Maybe I'm just talking about myself. I don't know, but I think it's a trend. I think it's us for the majority. So what do we do? I don't know. I think that we simplify. Maybe that's why I have this room. Maybe that's why I've done the remodel. Maybe that's why I'll enjoy, watching Risky Business on the Zenith System 3 on VHS instead of watching it upstairs on the bigger TV. I don't know. We never really needed to change that much. We didn't need new stuff. The wood grain clock radio was okay. It still tells the time that we need. We don't need to wear a device on our arm that tells us how much REM sleep we got and how many times we stirred during the night and how many times we switched from one side to the other and what our resting heart rate was when we slept. You know why? Because when I look at it in the morning, I'm going to freak out. I'm going to be like, well, why did that happen? So I'm not getting this kind of sleep. This is awful. And then it's just one more stupid thing for me to worry about. And somebody's just getting wealthy off of my stupidity, my needs. I don't have one of those stupid things, by the way. I don't. But I can't tell you what the most annoying thing in the world I see. That's like one of the most annoying things I've ever seen is when people slap their stupid watch because a text message just came in. I don't know. That's all. I got nothing else. There's your 20-minute rant for Sunday. Okay. Put thoughts down there. Put thoughts. Go interview your parents. Were your parents happier in the 80s because they had less stuff? Were their parents happier in the 60s because they had less stuff to worry about? Yes, I know they had worries. Don't write silly comments about people who had worries. I understand that. I'm not talking about worries. I'm talking about the amount of stuff. Just the basic mathematical equation has to make sense to people. If you have more, then you have more to want, more things to go wrong, more things to obsess over, and more things to worry about. I think that's just science. Anyway. All right. I'll see y'all. Good night now.